Chapter 4654. It's indeed the body of a human king. I wonder which part it belongs to. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. That bronze chest was exactly the same as the one he had obtained. Before this, Lu Ming had already learned from the bronze chest that the torso of the human king's body had been born. Only when the limbs and head were born together could one sense it. Hence, he was already clear that the limbs and head, except for the right arm, had all been born. He had previously guessed that it might be in the hands of the Heaven Destroyer and the Heavenly Palace. There's only one Heaven Destroyer. Could it be that the Heavenly Palace has three of them? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. In the blink of an eye, another dozen days passed. In these dozen days, the Heaven Destroyer and the Heavenly Palace did not make any moves. The main reason was that both sides were keeping an eye on each other. If one side made a move, the other would immediately move as well. Hence, neither side sent anyone into the halo first. The main reason was that the divine masters of both sides had yet to arrive. It was not the time to make a move yet. Pull one hair and the whole body would be affected. If one side started to take action, the other side would definitely take action as well. At this time, the Heaven Destroyer was ready to make a move. This was because their divine masters were almost all here. This was the first time Lu Ming truly witnessed the power of the Heaven Destroyer. 5,000. A total of 5,000 divine masters. This was a terrifying number. Lu Ming had not expected that the Heaven Destroyer would have 5,000 divine masters. However, when he thought about it, it was normal. Other things aside, the Heaven Destroyer had more than 1,000 divine masters at the 1,000-year battlefield. There were a few other places as important as the 1,000-year battlefield in the universe's ruins. The Heaven Destroyer had a large number of elites guarding each of these places. In addition, there were a few bases that were also guarded by a large number of elites. In total, it was normal for there to be 5,000 divine masters. This was not the total number. There should be some divine masters who had not arrived. However, most of them should have arrived. However, the number of divine masters at the Heavenly Palace was even more shocking. There were a total of 8,000 divine masters. This shocked Lu Ming. After all, the Heavenly Palace still had the Dark Universe to guard. The Dark Universe scattered almost half of the Heavenly Palace's power. This meant that the Heavenly Palace had at least 8,000 Almighty stationed in the Dark Universe. The power of the Heavenly Palace was truly astonishing. If not for the Dark Universe holding back half of the Heavenly Palace's power, the Heaven Destroyer would not have been a match for the Heavenly Palace. Of the 8,000 divine masters, 6,000 were from the Heavenly Human tribe, while the other 2,000 were from other tribes. The celestial race was known as the strongest race in the universe. It wasn't just for show. Their strength was truly incomparable. This didn't include the Quasi-Saint tribe. The Quasi-Saint tribe also had about 300 divine masters. Although this number couldn't be compared to the Celestial tribe, it was already much stronger than the other 9 tribes in the top 10 tribes. In terms of numbers, they completely crushed Heaven Destroyer's side. Let's go! Fei Huang ordered. The 5,000 divine masters of the Heaven Destroyer immediately flew toward the halo. The moment the Heaven Destroyer's side moved, it was immediately discovered by the Heavenly Palace. Since the Heaven Destroyer has set off, we won't wait any longer. It doesn't matter if the minority didn't come. Let's set off immediately. One of the Heavenly Palace lords said. Remember, once you enter the world within the halo, you have to listen to Immortal Young Master. Another Heavenly Palace lord also instructed. The divine masters all nodded. Among them, only a minority knew the true identity of the Yi Immortal. These people stood behind the Yi Immortal with fanatical expressions. Most of them were people on the same level as the Lord of Heaven. Although the others didn't know the true identity of the Yi Immortal, seeing so many people on the same level as the Lord of Heaven obediently listening to the Yi Immortal, they knew that the Yi Immortal's identity was definitely not simple. Naturally, they wouldn't disobey the order. Moreover, it was the Heavenly Master who had personally instructed them. Let's set off. The Yi Immortal said indifferently, a confident smile on his face the entire time. He took the first step forward. Yi Qiuxian and a few other Lord of Heaven experts followed closely behind. More than 8,000 divine masters marched toward the halo in a grandiose manner. The halo was boundlessly large, more than 100 million times larger than the planets of the primitive universe. The Heavenly Palace and the Heaven Destroyer entered the halo from two different directions. They were like specks of dust flying into the ocean. They were truly too insignificant. The closer they got to the halo, the more they felt how enormous the 8 halos were. Lu Ming couldn't help but sigh. The person who had laid down this array was truly incomparably powerful. Very soon, they entered the range of the halo. They didn't sense anything strange. They weren't attacked, nor were they restricted in any way. However, the reaction of the human king's right arm within the primitive ring was even more intense. The center of the halo was pitch black, like a pitch-black vortex that constantly spun. In any case, Lu Ming was unable to see what was behind the pitch-black vortex with his eyesight. However, Origin Realm experts could barely see that there seemed to be a continent within the pitch-black vortex. As for the specific features of the continent, they were unable to see it clearly. When Lu Ming's group passed through the halo and entered the central region, a powerful suction force suddenly appeared from the pitch-black vortex, sucking Lu Ming's group in. The suction force was very strong, but Lu Ming felt like he could still break free if he struggled as hard as he could. However, Lu Ming's group did not struggle. They wanted to enter the pitch-black vortex in the first place, so there was no need for them to do anything unnecessary. They cooperated with the suction force and quickly charged into the pitch-black vortex, vanishing from sight. As soon as they entered the pitch-black vortex, Lu Ming felt like he was being pulled by a force, constantly moving forward. After who knew how long, the pitch-black vortex suddenly vanished, and a vast expanse of land appeared below Lu Ming. Lu Ming was currently plummeting. He hurriedly circulated his forbidden power and stabilized himself, stopping in the air. Afterwards, he glanced around and discovered that the surrounding space was filled with people. The 5,000 divine masters of the Heaven Destroyer were all present. They had not split up. Below them was a dense forest. The forest was boundless, stretching as far as the eye could see. What huge trees! Many people sighed in amazement. The trees in the forest were all extremely huge. Any single one of them was over 100 meters in diameter, and there were many that were 1,000 meters in diameter. Their height was even more terrifying. They were basically colossal. Lu Ming felt like he had entered the elven palace of the past. What surprised Lu Ming the most was that the continent gave off a familiar presence to Lu Ming. Primordial, ancient, vast, heavy, grand. This presence was actually the same as the continent in the primordial ring that Lu Ming felt. It was basically the same. The continent in the primordial ring was made from a complete fragment of the primordial continent of the previous epoch. Could this continent also be a fragment of the primordial continent that was kept intact? Lu Ming's mind raced. This was very possible. The physical body of a human king was separated and sealed. This incident happened before the primordial continent was shattered. Someone had cut off a small piece of the primordial continent and sealed it in the continent of the 1,000-year battlefield. That was why it was kept intact and full of vitality, unlike the fragments of the primordial continent in the universe ruins, which had long lost the appearance of the primordial continent. Chapter 4655. This continent is intact and full of life. I wonder if there's any danger. Let's gather and move together. Don't split up. A deep voice rang out. It was a burly primitive god that spoke. Lu Ming recognized this person. His name was Lion, and he was an expert who stood at the peak of the almighty level. He was no weaker than the Lord of Heaven, who stood at the peak of the heavenly palace. A 9th-tier almighty was not considered a peak almighty. From the 1st tier to the 9th-tier almighty, one had to condense the universal bridge, making it longer and longer, extending toward the cosmic sea. At the 9th-tier almighty level, the universal bridge would reach the cosmic sea and connect with it. At that time, one could comprehend the cosmic origin. Once the cosmic origin was formed, one would condense an origin seed. That's right, an origin seed. Only by condensing an origin seed could one be considered a peak almighty. The Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Palace was a peak almighty who had condensed an origin seed. Of course, a peak Almighty's origin seed was not as weak as Lu Ming's. The amount of origin energy stored was so little that it could only unleash one attack. A peak Almighty's origin seed contained much more origin energy than Lu Ming's. The more origin energy it contained, the stronger it would be. Of course, one's strength was also related to the quality of the origin energy. Thus, the difference in strength between peak Almighty could be huge. When the origin energy condensed by an origin seed reached a limit, the origin seed would sprout and grow an origin root, which was also known as an origin root. At that time, one would have stepped into the origin realm. Of course, it was extremely difficult to make an origin seed sprout and grow an origin root. No matter what, a peak Almighty who had condensed an origin seed was extremely powerful, much more powerful than a 9th tier Almighty. Once the origin energy was unleashed, a 9th tier Almighty would not be able to resist and would be easily killed. As for Lion, he was considered a top-tier expert even among peak Almighty. He was only a step away from the origin realm. He was one of the leaders of the Almighty on Heaven Destroyer's side. As Lion spoke, everyone gathered together in a group and flew towards a certain direction. They flew for tens of thousands of miles without encountering any abnormalities or dangers. That is, suddenly, someone looked to the right. In that direction, there was a small black dot flying rapidly towards them. After a few breaths, the black dot became clear. They were all living beings. They are from the Heavenly Palace. Many people's expressions changed drastically. The people from the Heavenly Palace entered this continent from a different direction from us. Why are they so close to us? Someone cried out in alarm, finding it hard to believe. They had thought that they would not encounter the people from the Heavenly Palace so soon. He didn't expect to meet people from the Heavenly Palace as soon as he entered. The people from the Heavenly Palace also noticed the people from the Heaven Destroyer and stopped not far away. Then, the two heavenly human youths, escorted by a group of powerhouses, came to the forefront. These two young men were naturally Yi Immortal and Yi Qiuxian. Is that the Lu Ming who defeated you with the taboo body? Yi Immortal's gaze immediately fell on Lu Ming. He seemed to be very sensitive to the power of the taboo body. That's right, it's him. However, he won by luck last time. Next time, I will definitely suppress him. Yi Qiuxian's eyes were cold. A loss is a loss. However, he is not simple to be able to defeat you. Indeed, the taboo body is a scourge. None of them can be left alive. Yi Immortal said coldly. Immortal young master, what should we do now? A lord of heaven bowed and asked. Of course, we will attack. We have more than 8,000 Almighty on our side, while the traitors only have about 5,000. We have the absolute advantage. We will defeat the traitors in one fell swoop and take the human king's body from them. Moreover, these 5,000 Almighty make up most of the traitors' Almighty. If we can destroy them in one fell swoop, the traitors will lose their Almighty and will only have a small amount of origin energy left. Yi Immortal said coldly. His voice spread to the ears of the people from the Heavenly Palace. Get ready, attack and annihilate the traitors. A Lord of Heaven shouted as his aura erupted. He took the lead and rushed out. Kill all the traitors. The people from the Heavenly Palace, including more than 6,000 Almighty from the heavenly human race and more than 2,000 Almighty from other races, rushed toward Lu Ming and the others. Only the people from the Quasi-Saint tribe did not attack. More than 8,000 godly lords attacked together, creating a mighty aura that caused the sky and earth to violently tremble. The terrifying power formed waves of pressure, and the massive trees on the ground below began to explode and turn to dust under the pressure. Their battle cries shook the heavens. More than 8,000 beams of light shot toward the heaven-exterminating troop. The void was instantly smashed, forming huge black holes. The scene was terrifying. Defend with all your strength. The people from the Heaven Destroyer were shocked. Some of the top Almighty roared. They only had about 5,000 Almighty, which was more than 3,000 fewer than the enemy. The gap was too big. If they fought together, they would definitely lose and be slaughtered. Only by gathering everyone's strength and defending with all their strength could they block the enemy's attack. On the side of the sky exterminating troop, All of them gathered together and used all of their defensive secret skills to attack. Inside the heavenly palace, countless dazzling lights spread out, forming layers upon layers of defense. There were huge shields, tortoiseshell-like light shadows, huge divine walls, and huge metal tablets. Lu Ming also unleashed his full strength. He cast all the secret skills of the 3,000 ancient secret skills that were used for defense. Great defensive technique, great shield technique. All kinds of defensive secret techniques and treasures filled the void. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, the attacks from the heavenly palace bombarded the defenses of the Heaven Destroyer, causing an earth-shattering explosion. All kinds of defensive secret techniques and treasures vibrated violently. After all, the enemy had more than 3,000 people, and their attack power was too strong. If they fought head-on, just this wave alone would kill many people from the Heaven Destroyer. However, they did not seek to win, only to not make any mistakes. They only focused on defending. By gathering everyone's strength, they managed to defend against the attacks from the heavenly palace. Although all kinds of secret techniques and treasures vibrated violently, in the end, they still managed to defend. Continue attacking, don't give them a chance to breathe. A Lord of Heaven expert roared. Kill! More than 8,000 Almighty from the heavenly palace roared and launched the second wave of attacks. Retreat, retreat, defend and retreat at the same time. Some of the experts from the Heaven Destroyer shouted. Everyone continued to gather together to defend and then slowly retreat. Boom, 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 boom. Another series of violent explosions, and a terrifying force swept out in all directions. The land within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was completely destroyed, and not even a blade of grass grew. Chapter 46-56. However, this continent was unimaginably sturdy. The shockwaves from the attacks of so many divine masters only destroyed a layer of the surface and the vegetation on the surface. They didn't penetrate the earth or crack it open. If this had happened in the desolate universe, with so many powerful beings battling against each other, they might have been able to destroy many galaxies. It could be seen how sturdy this continent was. The second wave of attacks was also blocked. The Heaven Destroyer used this wave of attacks to quickly retreat. Continue attacking. Don't let them escape. The Heavenly Palace's people roared and attacked with all their might. However, the Heaven Destroyer's side was defending with all their might. The Heavenly Palace's people couldn't break through in a short time. After 7 or 8 waves of attacks, they still couldn't break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Damn it! Many Heavenly Palace's experts roared. They felt that the Heaven Destroyer was like a tortoise and it wasn't easy to attack. As long as they could break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense and force the Heaven Destroyer to fight head-on, they could easily defeat the Heaven Destroyer. In a head-on battle, the Heavenly Palace had the absolute advantage. Now, the most troublesome thing was how to break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Not far away, Yi Immortal and Yi Qiuxian stood quietly in the void and didn't make a move. Quasi-Saint Tribe, why aren't you making a move? Attack together and break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Yi Qiuxian looked at the people of the Quasi-Saint race and ordered coldly. Our Quasi-Saint Tribe has always stayed out of things. We won't get involved in the matters between the Heavenly Palace and the Heaven Destroyer. A youth from the Quasi-Saint Tribe smiled and said, This youth looked to be in his 20s. He was handsome and had an unparalleled temperament. His white clothes fluttered in the wind and he belonged to the type that could charm thousands of girls. What do you mean by not getting involved? The primitive universe is under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Palace. Regardless of the race, they have to listen to the orders of the Heavenly Palace, including your Quasi-Saint Tribe. Now, I order you to attack. Yi Qiuxian shouted and looked coldly at the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth. Hee. The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth smiled faintly with contempt. What are you laughing at? Yi Qiuxian's gaze was cold. Your words are too laughable. That's why I'm laughing. Your Heavenly Palace commands the other races, but you want to order my Quasi-Saint race around? Aren't you too naive? The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth sneered. Audacious! Is your Quasi-Saint race trying to rebel? I would like to see how capable you are. Yi Qiuxian shouted coldly and took a step forward. His figure was like a bolt of lightning as he charged towards the youth of the quasi-saint race. Behind the youth of the quasi-saint race, a middle-aged man stepped forward and wanted to attack, but the youth waved his hand to stop him. "I of Yi Qiuxian's. Of Yi Yi Yi." In the next instant, Yi Qiuxian's attack arrived. His perfect heaven's power erupted as he blasted his palm towards the youth of the quasi-saint race. The quasi-saint race's youth didn't dodge and also blasted out a palm to meet Yi Qiuxian's palm. Yi Qiuxian snorted inwardly. He could see that the quasi-saint tribe's youth was a sixth-stage divine master like him. It wasn't that he was arrogant, but that he was too strong. Apart from Lu Ming, no one in the universe could fight with him. Of course, Yi Immortal was an exception. The quasi-saint tribe's youth was too naive to want to face his attack head-on. Boom! The two palms collided with one another, resulting in a deafening explosion. Yi Qiuxian's expression changed. He felt that his perfect heaven's power had met a strong opponent. He couldn't instantly defeat his opponent's power. Instead, he felt that there was a terrifying power surging toward him from the quasi-saint tribe's youth's palm. Yi Qiuxian couldn't help but retreat by more than 10 steps. On the other side, the quasi-saint tribe's youth also retreated by more than 10 steps. In this move, the two of them were evenly matched. "Ah, perfect heaven's power is indeed powerful. I've learned a lot today." The quasi-saint tribe's youth laughed loudly. His eyes glowed with strong battle intent. As for Yi Qiuxian, his heart was in turmoil and he couldn't calm down. He was actually blocked. Although he had only used 80% of his strength, who could be sure that the quasi-saint tribe's youth had used his full strength? Maybe he hadn't used his full strength. In the primitive universe, apart from Lu Ming, there was actually someone who could fight with him. This was a huge blow to Yi Qiuxian. "I don't believe it. He must have used his full strength just now. The perfect heaven's power is invincible. Apart from Lu Ming, no one in the same realm can fight with me." Yi Qiuxian roared in his heart and was about to attack again. "Yi Qiuxian, enough." At this moment, Yi Immortal shouted and Yi Qiuxian stopped abruptly. "Immortal young master, let me teach these quasi-saint tribe a lesson. These people are becoming more and more rebellious." Yi Qiuxian said, "No need. I have my own plans. You may leave." Yi Immortal said with a cold expression. Yi Qiuxian didn't dare to disobey Yi Immortal's order and could only leave obediently. However, he was very unwilling. "I didn't expect the quasi-saint tribe to have another genius who can control the power of a quasi-saint. Congratulations," Yi Immortal said with a smile. "Immortal young master is too polite. I was just lucky to control the power of a quasi-saint." The quasi-saint tribe's youth replied with a smile. He didn't dare to slight Yi Immortal. Although he didn't know Yi Immortal's true identity, seeing how Yi Qiuxian and the Lord of Heaven of the celestial race were respectful to Yi Immortal, he knew that this person's identity was absolutely shocking. Today, there is no need for the quasi-saint tribe to attack. We are enough to break through the defense of the Heaven Destroyer," Yi Wuchang said as he turned his gaze back to the battlefield. Yi Qiuxian was bewildered. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Yi Immortal was actually a little afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. Yes, it was fear. Yi Immortal was the strongest existence in the history of the celestial race. It was simply inconceivable that he would be afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. Although the quasi-saint tribe had always been ranked first among the top 10 races, no matter how strong they were only one of the top 10 races. In the eyes of the celestial race, they were just ants that could be slaughtered at any time. The strongest existence in the history of the celestial race was actually afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Yi Qiuxian would have found it hard to believe. At the same time, he understood one thing. The quasi-saint tribe wasn't simple. They weren't simple at all. He had underestimated the quasi-saint tribe in the past. "It seems like we have to attack. Yi Qiuxian, get ready to activate the human king's left arm. We need to borrow the strength of the human king's physical body to tear apart the defense of the Heaven Destroyer," Yi Wuchang said. After he finished speaking, his figure had already rushed out. As he rushed out, he had already taken out the human king's left leg and fused it into his left leg. When he appeared in the sky above the battlefield, he had already activated the power of the human king's left leg. Boom! Yi Wuxia took a step forward, and a gigantic foot appeared, stomping towards the exterminating heavens troop. Its power was extremely terrifying. Chapter 4657. Oh no, that's the power of the human king's body. I'll stop him. Primordial God, she roared. He also controlled the human king's right leg, so he could sense the Immortal's attack the moment it happened. Without any hesitation, she also fused with the power of the human king's right leg. With his head down and his leg up, he charged up, activating the power of the human king's right leg. Similarly, a huge leg appeared and smashed upwards, colliding with the Immortal's attack. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion rang out, as if two Origin Realm experts were clashing. Then, the two huge legs collapsed at the same time. She and Yi Immortal retreated, one flying upwards and the other falling downwards. This move was a draw. In the next moment, Yi Immortal activated the power of the human king's left leg and attacked. She countered the attack as well. With Yi Immortal's strength, activating the human king's left leg could only last for a little more than a breath's time. Hence, he had to end the battle quickly. The speed of the two was extremely shocking. A little more than a breath's time was enough for the two to exchange many moves. Boom, boom, boom. In a little more than a breath's time, the two had exchanged 7 or 8 moves. They were both equally matched. Their battle prowess seems to be about the same after activating the human king's body. They're both at the Origin Realm. It doesn't seem to have much to do with the cultivation of the person activating it. Lu Ming observed carefully from the crowd. Xi's cultivation was at the 8th layer of the Divine Master Realm, which was clearly higher than his opponent's. However, the two of them were evenly matched. Moreover, the battle prowess he displayed was also at the Origin Realm. It was about the same as Lu Ming's when he activated the human king's body. It didn't seem to have much to do with one's cultivation. Perhaps it was because the power of the human king's body was too terrifying, while their strength was too weak. They could only use it as a trigger to activate a portion of the power of the human king's body. Hence, no matter how strong they were, as long as they activated the human king's body, the power they could erupt with was at the Origin Realm. The two of them exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Both of them had almost exhausted all their strength, so they had to stop. Yi Immortal retreated rapidly. And she landed in the Heaven Destroyer. Yi Qiuxian, you do it? Yi Immortal instructed. Then he took out several divine pills and swallowed them, starting to recover his strength. Leave it to me. Yi Qiuxian stepped forward. The left arm of the human king fused into his left arm. Break! Yi Qiuxian roared and punched out. The power of the human king's left arm exploded, and a huge fist blasted towards the Heaven Destroyer. Not good. It's the power of the human king's physical body again, she roared when he sensed it. Should I make a move? Should I make a move? Lu Ming's mind raced. He was also a little anxious and couldn't decide whether to make a move or not. No one knew that he was in control of the human king's right arm, and he did not want to expose it. Given his cultivation, there was no way he would be able to protect such a precious item if it was exposed. Even if he could protect it, he would be targeted by the people of the Heavenly Palace. There would definitely be endless pursuit. The Heavenly Palace would definitely spare no effort to snatch the right arm of the human king from him. His original plan was to silently obtain the torso of the human king's physical body, or even the other parts of the body, and complete the body. Just as Lu Ming was hesitating, Yi Qiuxian's attack had already landed. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion rang out. Yi Qiuxian had activated the left arm of the human king and erupted with the power of the Origin Realm. It was too powerful. The layers of defense laid down by the Heaven Destroyer were destroyed one after another. In an instant, more than 200 layers of defense were destroyed. Many of the Divine Lords defending that area shook violently. Their faces turned pale, and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Fortunately, they managed to block it. However, many of them felt extremely heavy. The attack power of the origin realm was too strong. It would break the balance. If the attack continued, it would most likely tear a hole in their defense. On the other hand, if the experts of the Heavenly Palace swarmed in, their defense would be completely torn apart. By then, it would become a chaotic battle. Once a chaotic battle broke out, the Heaven Destroyer's side would be doomed. "Break for me!" Yi Qiuxian roared and was about to attack again. He could only hold on for a little more than a breath. He could not afford any delay. He had to tear apart the defense of the Heaven Destroyer in one go. "He's coming. Block it with all your strength. You must block it!" Someone on the Heaven Destroyer's side yelled. Boom! Yi Qiuxian threw another punch with astonishing power. At this moment, Lu Ming soared into the sky. The Human King's right arm had fused into his right arm. He had decided to attack in the end. At this moment, there was no other way. If he was exposed, so be it. It was better than having the defense of the Heaven Destroyer torn apart. Once the defense was torn apart, the Heaven Destroyer would be doomed. At the same time, Lu Ming would also be in danger. The people of the Heavenly Palace would definitely target him first. Facing so many experts, no matter how strong he was, only death would await him. The power of the Human King's right arm was stimulated. Lu Ming threw a punch. A similarly huge fist was formed and collided with Yi Qiuxian's fist. An earth-shattering roar erupted, and the two of them retreated at the same time. He blocked it. The people on the Heaven Destroyer's side were ecstatic. At the same time, they were a little stunned. They did not expect that there would be someone who could block Yi Qiuxian's attack. Didn't the Heaven Destroyer only have one Human King's body? Lu Ming, you actually have a Human King's body too. At this moment, Yi Qiuxian roared and continued to attack. The two of them exchanged another blow. It was still a draw. As for the others, they were greatly shocked. It seemed that Lu Ming had really mastered a Human King's body. Especially Tang Jun, Mo Chong, and the others who were more familiar with Lu Ming. They looked at each other in dismay. They were already quite familiar with Lu Ming. Along the way, they had already seen through all of Lu Ming's secrets. But now, they realized that they were gravely mistaken. Lu Ming was hiding countless secrets and trump cards. It's the Human King's right arm. The four limbs of the Human King have appeared, but where is the head? Yi Immortal muttered. He judged that the Human King's head should not be on the Heaven Destroyer. If it was not on the Heaven Destroyer, then where was it? Yi Immortal glanced at the young man from the quasi-saint race. That young man from the quasi-saint race even smiled. Lu Ming and Yi Qiuxian's speed was very fast. At this moment, they had already exchanged 5 or 6 blows. And more than a breath of time had passed. Not good, I've exhausted my energy. Retreat. Yi Qiuxian was shocked. He circulated his remaining energy and quickly retreated. I still have energy for one more blow. Lu Ming roared and threw a punch at Yi Qiuxian. Just now, Yi Qiuxian had attacked first. Lu Ming attacked later. Therefore, Lu Ming still had energy for one more blow. A terrifying fist force blasted towards Yi Qiuxian. Yi Qiuxian's pupils shrank rapidly. However, Yi Qiuxian was surrounded by experts from the Heavenly Palace. Immediately, 5 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven joined forces to block Lu Ming's punch. Chapter 4658. 5 experts on the same level as the Lord of Heaven appeared in front of Yi Qiuxian and used a defensive secret technique in an attempt to block Lu Ming's attack. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out as a violent shockwave swept out in all directions. The defensive secret technique used by the 5 Lord of Heaven was directly destroyed. The violent shockwave struck the 5 Lord of Heaven. The 5 Lord of Heaven's bodies shook violently as they retreated and spat out large mouthfuls of blood. 3 of them had their arms blown apart and were covered in blood. The other 2 who were slightly weaker were even worse off. They were sent flying into the forest far away and broke a dozen trees before crashing into the ground and creating a huge crater. They lay in the crater with pale faces and were unable to move at all. Although the 5 Lord of Heaven level experts were not dead, they were all heavily injured. The difference between a divine master and a reciprocity expert was not small at all. What a pity! Lu Ming sighed. After this move, He had used up all the energy in his body and could not continue attacking. If he used another move, he would definitely be able to kill several Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming borrowed the force of his punch and flew into the Heaven Destroyer's group to be protected. The 4 limbs of the Human King's body have appeared. Where is the Human King's head? Ye Immortal muttered. At this moment, Ye Immortal's expression suddenly changed. That was because the Human King's left leg on his body suddenly shook violently and broke free from his control, flying into the sky. Stay here! Ye Immortal roared as he grabbed the air with his hand. A powerful suction force was generated as he tried to grab the Human King's left leg. However, it was useless. The Human King's left leg shook slightly and broke free from Ye Immortal's power, flying into the sky. At the same time, the same thing happened to the Human King's bodies on Lu Ming, Yi Qiuxian, and Shi. They all flew out of their bodies. Lu Ming used his taboo power to stop it, but it was useless. It was the same for Shi and Yi Qiuxian. Even if the experts beside them wanted to help, it was useless. Those peak Divine Master experts coughed up blood and retreated after being shaken by the Human King's physical body. The 4 limbs of the sovereign personage's body all flew into the sky, emitting a dazzling light. Seal! Suddenly, a loud roar reverberated throughout the entire area. Everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the Quasi-Saint tribe. At this moment, more than 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Saint tribe formed an array and shot out rays of light to suppress a stone head. This stone head had flown out from the body of the youth from the Quasi-Saint race. The head of the Human King's body. Everyone's heart trembled. So it turns out that the head of the Human King's physical body is with the Quasi-Immortal race. Lu Ming, Ye Immortal, and the others couldn't help but think to themselves. At the same time, what shocked them even more was the strength of the Quasi-Immortal race. Only 300 Divine Masters came from the Quasi-Immortal race. Previously, these 300 Divine Masters didn't reveal their auras but used a technique to conceal their auras. They hid it so well that even peak Divine Masters couldn't see through them. Now, in order to stop the Human King's head, the Quasi-Immortal race unleashed their full strength and revealed their cultivation. 6th level Divine Master realm and above. The 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race were all at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm and above. Even the weakest among them was at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm. This caused most of the people present to be shocked to the extreme. The Quasi-Immortal race was ranked first among the top 10 races and had always been ranked first. It wasn't strange for them to have 300 Divine Masters. However, all 300 Divine Masters were at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm and above. This was terrifying. This meant that the Quasi-Immortal race had an unimaginable number of Divine Master experts. Those who came were only a portion of those with higher cultivation. The Quasi-Immortal race actually had such terrifying strength, especially the people from Heaven Destroyer. Their expressions were even uglier. Fortunately, the Quasi-Immortal race hadn't made a move. If the Quasi-Immortal race had helped the Heavenly Palace attack them, they wouldn't have been able to resist and would have been broken through. Among the people present, only the Yi Immortal looked calm and didn't seem surprised. However, the 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race joined forces to suppress the Human King's head, but it was to no avail. The Human King's head shook slightly and broke through the 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race's blockade. The 300 Divine Masters turned pale and couldn't help but retreat. The Human King's head had already flown high into the sky. The Human King's limbs and head seemed to have produced some kind of resonance in the sky and emitted dazzling rays of light. The next moment, the Human King's limbs and head flew toward the north at an astonishing speed and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Everyone was dumbfounded, including the Yi Immortal. They obviously hadn't expected this scene. What's going on? Chest, what's going on? Why did the Human King's body suddenly fly away? Lu Ming's spiritual consciousness condensed in the chaos ring and asked the bronze chest. However, the bronze chest didn't respond. No matter how Lu Ming asked, the bronze chest didn't respond and acted as though it was dead. The Yi Immortal, Yi Qiuxian, Shi, and the youth from the Quasi-Immortal race also asked the bronze chest, but the bronze chest also didn't respond. Let's chase. The youth from the quasi-immortal race shouted and led the quasi-immortal race experts to fly toward the north. Immortal Prince, what should we do? A heavenly human race expert asked the Immortal Prince. It's strange now. Even if we catch up now, we might not be able to catch up. Let the quasi-immortal race take the lead. You guys continue to attack and kill the rebels. The Yi Immortal ordered. The experts from the heavenly palace continued to attack. The attacks of more than 8,000 divine masters covered the sky and bombarded the heaven destroyer. There were too many of them. Although Lu Ming had severely injured 5 experts of the Lord of Heaven's level with one move, it didn't affect the overall battle situation. The heaven destroyer could only defend with all its might and didn't have the strength to fight back. Save me, save me. Suddenly, a cry for help came from not far away. Many people looked in that direction. Over there were 2 experts of the Lord of Heaven's level. They were the 2 people who had been severely injured by Lu Ming. They were lying on the ground and couldn't move at all. They were trying their best to heal their injuries. Unknowingly, a huge tiger had appeared not far away from the 2 of them. This ferocious tiger had 2 long fangs as it stared greedily at the 2 heavenly human tribe heavenly monarchs. The ferocious tiger let out a long roar and pounced on the 2 heaven monarchs. It opened its bloody mouth and was about to swallow the 2 heaven monarchs. The 2 Lord of Heaven were terrified. They burst out with all their remaining strength and barely blocked the tiger's attack. At the same time, they screamed in horror. "Evil beast, you're courting death!" The people from the heavenly human race shouted. Dozens of experts from the heavenly human race struck at the tiger. Dozens of beams of light flew towards the ferocious tiger and bombarded its body, causing it to roll away. However, the tiger didn't die. There were only a few wounds on its body and blood kept flowing out. Chapter 46:59. The tiger seemed to be infuriated after being injured. It stared at the heavenly humans and roared with murderous intent in its eyes. How dare an animal refuse to submit? Kill it. The dozens of heavenly humans attacked again. Dozens of attacks flew toward the tiger again. This time, the tiger learned its lesson. It turned around and ran away. It leaped through the forest at an astonishing speed and disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. That animal ran away quickly. The heavenly humans snorted and continued to attack the heaven destroyer. However, before they could make 2 moves, a roar suddenly came from the depths of the forest. The roar was earth-shattering. It pierced through the sky as if it was going to tear the sky apart. Those enormous ancient trees were also trembling non-stop. Some of them even exploded. Rumble. In the next moment, the ground shook violently. It was as if another giant creature was coming from the depths of the forest. Soon, everyone saw clearly that it was indeed a huge monster. It was a ferocious tiger. It was more than 1,000 meters tall. It had 2 fangs in its mouth that were sharper than a sword. Wherever it passed, the giant ancient trees would explode into pieces. Behind it were 2 smaller tigers. One of them had wounds on its body. It was the one that was beaten away by the heavenly humans. The giant tiger in front of them roared. The terrifying sound waves made many people's faces change drastically. They kept retreating. The tiger's eyes were blood red. It was filled with murderous intent. It glanced at the heaven destroyer and the people from the heavenly palace. Then, it leaped and charged toward the heavenly palace. It waved its claws. A few sharp claws tore through the void and grabbed at the heavenly palace. Block it! The people from the heavenly palace were shocked. The tiger's aura was too terrifying. It was far beyond the almighty realm. It gave them the feeling that they were facing an origin. The people from the heavenly palace stopped attacking the heaven destroyer. They changed the direction of all their attacks and blasted at the tiger. The combined attack of more than 8,000 divine masters was unimaginably terrifying. No matter how strong the tiger was, it was impossible for it to contend against more than 8,000 divine masters. The claw light it unleashed was instantly destroyed. Many of the remaining attacks landed on the tiger. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions rang out as the tiger's huge body was sent flying. It rolled on the ground for hundreds of thousands of meters, smashing into countless trees. However, this tiger was actually fine. There was not a single wound on its body. After rolling for some distance, it struggled to get up and shook its head. Then, it let out an angry roar. Its killing intent was even stronger than before. The ferocious tiger roared and charged towards the heavenly palace. It waved its claws and spat out a huge beam of light with terrifying power. "Let's attack together!" A lord of heaven roared. More than 8,000 experts from the heavenly palace attacked together, blocking the tiger's attack and sending it flying. However, the tiger was still fine. It shook its head and stood up. There was not a single wound on its body. Even those experts on the level of the Lord of Heaven could not leave a single wound on its body. Reciprocity. This tiger must be at reciprocity, Jianghu sighed. Someone roared. Even if it's at origin realm, it can't be completely unscathed from the attacks of so many divine masters. Someone else roared. Many people's faces were ugly. Yes, there were more than 8,000 divine masters, and many of them were above the 7th layer of the divine master realm. There were even quite a few peak divine masters. With so many experts working together, they could definitely beat a divine master to death. However, this tiger had forcefully withstood their attacks. What was going on? An ancient remnant. This is a remnant from the ancient continent of the last epoch. Its body is extremely powerful and its defense is shocking. It's not something you can break through. Immortal's voice rang out. An ancient remnant. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that this ferocious tiger had lived from the previous era until now? An existence at origin realm had the same lifespan as the universe. As long as the universe was not destroyed, it would not die. It was normal for it to have lived from the last epoch until now. Let's retreat. Heaven Destroyer would not miss such an opportunity. Now that the people from the heavenly palace had no time to deal with them, it was a good opportunity to retreat. More than 5,000 people from Heaven Destroyer gathered together and retreated. Even if the people from the heavenly palace wanted to pursue them, they could not. The tiger was attacking them again. The people from the heavenly palace could only focus on dealing with the tiger. The tiger's attack power was about the same as an ordinary origin realm expert, but its defense was too strong. Its skin was thick and its bones were extremely tough. So many attacks landed on it, but they could not break through its defense. In the end, Immortal had no choice but to give the order to retreat. The 8,000 divine lords from the heavenly palace attacked as they retreated. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the area. After the people from Heaven Destroyer left the heavenly palace's line of sight, they sped up and flew to the west. After flying a certain distance, they flew to the north. After all, the body of the human king was flying to the north. They speculated that the torso of the human king was very likely to be in the north. The 4 limbs and head of the human king had sensed the torso of the human king and flown to the north. Only by flying to the north could they find the body of the human king. However, they did not fly at high altitudes. Instead, they landed in the forest and quickly moved through it. The appearance of the ferocious tiger just now reminded them that this continent was very likely inhabited by species left behind from the previous era. The ancient continent of the last epoch was mysterious to them. They did not know how powerful the creatures of that era were, but they could tell from the tiger that there were definitely existences at origin realm. They did not dare to be careless. Flying at high altitudes made it very easy for them to be targeted. If a few origin realm primordial descendants came, they would probably be wiped out. However, even though they moved through the forest, they still encountered attacks before long. Several huge pythons appeared. They were completely azure, each several hundred meters long and over a dozen meters wide. They coiled around several large trees and lunged at Lu Ming's group. Fortunately, these pythons were not too powerful. They only seemed to be at the 8th or 9th layer of the Divine Lord realm. Their attacks were not very powerful. However, their defenses were shockingly strong. Not even 9th layer Divine Lord experts could break through the defenses of these pythons. In the end, several peak Divine Lord experts had to use their origin energy to kill these pythons. After killing the pythons, the peak Divine Lord experts did not waste any of their energy. They stowed away the pythons' corpses. These pythons were primordial descendants. Their defenses were just too monstrous. Using their skin to refine leather armor was extremely shocking. This made many people's eyes light up. Ignoring everything else, these primordial descendants were treasures on this continent. Their entire bodies were treasures. If they could kill the tiger from before and use its skin to refine leather armor, probably even Origin Realm experts would struggle to break through its defenses. Unfortunately, it was just too difficult to kill. Chapter 4660. The group continued to head north. In a few hours, they encountered several waves of attacks. The strongest one was at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. It had a powerful physical body, and its defense was terrifying. It rampaged and killed several Divine Master Realm fighters. In the end, it took several Peak Almighty experts working together, and one Peak Almighty expert even took out an Origin-level divine weapon to finally kill this Peak Almighty being. This caused everyone's hearts to feel heavy. It was too difficult to kill these surviving creatures of the untainted land. If there were more of them, it would be difficult to deal with them. The group rested for a while and continued forward. Some Peak Divine Master Realm experts arranged for some people to scatter around and search for traces of the surviving creatures of the untainted land. If they found a particularly strong one or a large group of them, they would immediately take a detour. Half a day later, suddenly, enemy attack, a loud roar came from the forest ahead. Then, there was a violent explosion. Sword chi and blade radiance burst out and a great battle broke out. Everyone's muscles tensed up. They looked around and prepared for a great battle. The scattered god lords quickly retreating from the ground to where the main force was. What's going on? The primordial divine spirit, Lion, asked. There are surviving creatures of the untainted land. There are many of them, someone yelled. Why did you only find out now? Lion roared. They're too cunning and fast. They can hide in the trees and it's hard to find them. You have to be careful. They might have already approached, someone replied. The next moment, Lu Ming felt goosebumps all over his body, as if something terrifying was staring at him. Immediately, there were sounds coming from all directions. This sound was almost like a wolf's howl. Then, Lu Ming and the others found that many giant green wolves appeared on the giant trees around them. Each of these giant wolves was 10 meters tall. They were huge and their bodies were green, similar to the color of the giant trees. They could easily blend into the giant trees. There were at least a few hundred of them. They stood on the branches of those huge trees, glaring at Lu Ming and the group like tigers eyeing their prey. Many people's hair stood on end. They had been discovered by so many surviving creatures of the untainted land so close. Defend, defend, the lion roared. Roar, with a long howl, hundreds of giant green wolves charged towards the Heaven Destroyer. Lion roared and took the initiative to attack. The other members of the Sky Exterminating Troop also attacked together. More than 5,000 attacks blasted out in all directions, bombarding the giant green wolves. Many of the giant green wolves were sent flying, but they shook their heads and stood up, completely fine. Only a few giant green wolves had been killed, and they had all been killed by a Peak Divine Master. His defensive power was shockingly strong. Ow, 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 the giant wolf howled and continued to charge towards the Heaven Destroyer. These giant green wolves had varying levels of combat power. The weaker ones were at the 3rd level of the Divine Master Realm, while the stronger ones were at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. It was especially so for those giant wolves at the peak of the Almighty level. They were too strong, and they relied on their powerful defenses to attack the Heaven Destroyer in a frenzy. The only way to force the Heaven Destroyer to defend with all its might was to defend it as it had done against the Heavenly Palace. However, these giant wolves were not like the ones in the Heavenly Palace. These giant wolves relied on their defensive power to attack crazily. After charging for a while, hundreds of giant wolves suddenly charged out from under the ground, charging out from under the feet of Lu Ming and the others. This time they were caught off guard. Dozens of divine masters were torn apart by the giant green wolves and became food in their stomachs. Moreover, the defense of the Heaven Destroyer was completely torn apart. It turned into a chaotic battle. A giant green wolf at the 5th level of the Divine Master Realm roared and charged towards Lu Ming. It was more than 10 meters tall, and it was like a small mountain pressing down on Lu Ming. Kill! Lu Ming shouted softly, and the God of War spear shot out like a bolt of lightning. The God of War spear pierced through the giant wolf's neck, piercing through it. A one-shot kill. Lu Ming pulled out the God of War spear and charged at another giant wolf. The God of War spear was a top-notch source-level divine weapon, and its tip was incomparably sharp. Back then, the God of War spear had pierced through Yi Chu Tianji's source-level divine armor. From this, one could see just how sharp the God of War spear was. Although these giant green wolves had astonishing defensive power, they could not block the sharpness of the God of War spear. Another giant green wolf at the 6th level of the Divine Master Realm was killed by Lu Ming's spear. Lu Ming held the God of Combat spear in his hand and went on a rampage. Every spear strike could kill a huge green wolf. In less than a minute, 6 giant green wolves had been killed by Lu Ming. However, the others did not have the same results as Lu Ming. They could not break through the defenses of the giant green wolves so easily. Over 500 giant green wolves were crazily attacking, and Heaven Destroyer's side had already suffered more than 100 casualties. The giant wolves at the peak of the Divine Master Realm were especially powerful. A single peak Divine Master on Heaven Destroyer's side could not stop a single giant green wolf. At least 2 peak Divine Masters were needed to stop the giant green wolves. There were even fewer people who could kill the giant green wolves. There were only a few of them. These peak Divine Lord existences all possessed source-level divine weapons. Only source-level divine weapons could kill those peak Divine Lord giant wolves. However, there were too few people who could control source-level divine weapons. One must know that even among the Origin Realm experts, more than half of them did not have source-level divine weapons. Those who possessed source-level divine weapons at the Divine Master Realm were all people with great luck who had found them in the ruins of the universe. Should I lend out a few? Lu Ming's mind rapidly turned. He had quite a few divine weapons on him. If he could lend them to the peak Divine Masters, they would definitely be able to increase their battle prowess. Just as Lu Ming was about to move, a gust of wind blew over. A giant green wolf knocked away a Heaven Destroyer expert and charged at Lu Ming with murderous intent. It was abnormally fast, and its claws were even sharper than divine blades as it swiped at Lu Ming's head. Unable to dodge in time, Lu Ming swung the War God's spear and swept it out. With a clang, the War God's spear collided with the giant green wolf's claws, erupting with a violent boom. Lu Ming's body shook violently as he involuntarily retreated. A giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master Realm. Lu Ming's heart sank. Clearly, the 6 giant green wolves he had just killed had attracted the attention of a powerful giant wolf. The one that had attacked Lu Ming just now was a giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master Realm. That giant wolf roared and pounced on Lu Ming. Its huge claws scratched at Lu Ming, emitting an ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air. Lu Ming could only use his full strength against a giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master Realm. He did not have the energy to send out another source-level divine weapon. The War God's spear turned into a bolt of lightning as it stabbed toward the giant wolf's forehead, but it was blocked by the giant wolf's claws. Lu Ming's arm went numb from the impact, and he retreated several steps. Chapter 4661. What powerful strength! Lu Ming felt his arm go numb and his blood churn. This giant azure wolf was shockingly strong, not at all weaker than a heavenly human of the same level. In truth, these primordial remnant beasts were all very strong, not weaker than a heavenly human of the same level. Previously, he felt that these primordial remnant beasts were not particularly strong, mainly because their defenses were so strong that he had neglected their strength. Being on par with a heavenly human of the same level was already standing at the apex of the primordial universe. In a head-on clash, the 9th-level Divine Lord Azure Wolf could already suppress Lu Ming. The giant green wolf roared, spewing out heat waves from its mouth. With a leap, it continued to charge toward Lu Ming. Swish, swish, swish. Lu Ming brandished the war god's spear, thrusting out spear light as he fought with the giant wolf. Lu Ming now had fewer trump cards. Without his greatest trump card, the human king right arm, he only had origin energy. However, he only had one move of origin energy. Although it was powerful, he could not use it carelessly. Lu Ming had to find the right opportunity to use it in order to kill in one blow. Not far away, wolf howls could be heard as the attacks of the giant azure wolves became even more intense. Relying on their powerful defenses, they constantly pounced. Although Heaven Destroyer had 10 times the number of people compared to the giant azure wolves, there were not many experts who could kill the giant azure wolves. One had to be at least 2 levels higher than the giant azure wolves to be able to break through their defenses. This made it very difficult to kill the giant azure wolves above the 8th level of the Godlord realm. That one in the distance is the Wolf King. The wolf pack is usually under the control of the Wolf King. Only by killing the Wolf King can we force back the pack of wolves. The primordial divine spirit, lion, roared. Many people also saw a giant azure wolf standing on a branch of a giant tree not far away. This giant green wolf was entirely green, and its green fur seemed to be dancing with green flames. This giant wolf was clearly the Wolf King. Every time it roared, the giant wolves would madly attack. "I'll go kill him. Count me in." Immediately, 3 figures broke through the encirclement and charged toward the Wolf King. These 3 figures were all peak divine masters. The Wolf King wasn't afraid at all. It faced the 3 experts head-on. Its sharp claws clawed continuously, blocking the attacks of the 3 experts. The 3 masters exchanged more than 10 moves with the Wolf King, but there was no clear victor. This Wolf King's strength was astonishing. Although it hadn't reached the origin level, its battle prowess was much stronger than the other giant wolves at the peak of the almighty level. To kill the Wolf King, we need a source-grade weapon. "Tianxian, come with me." The lion roared as its body swelled up rapidly. It grew to a height of 1,000 feet as it charged at the Wolf King. Another expert of the 5th level of the Divine Master realm attacked the Wolf King together with Lion. Both of them were in control of soul-level divine weapons, so their battle prowess was stronger than the other peak divine masters. With the addition of 2 peak divine masters who wielded soul-grade divine weapons, they instantly had the upper hand. After a few moves, Lion struck the giant wolf with his soul-grade divine weapon, leaving a huge wound on the giant wolf's body. With the support of a peak divine master, the soul-grade divine weapon was enough to break through the giant wolf's defense. Peak divine masters had also condensed origin seeds. They had much more origin power than Lu Ming. When they activated their soul-grade divine weapons, their might was astonishing. Howl howl, the Wolf King was injured. It immediately roared and tried to summon the other giant wolves to help it. "Hold them back." The members of Heaven Destroyer roared furiously. They outnumbered the giant wolves by 10 times. Although many of them couldn't break through the giant wolves' defense, they could still hold them back. They could even send the giant wolves tumbling out of their encirclement. Thousands of attacks rained down on the giant wolves. Although they didn't deal much damage, the giant wolves could forget about escaping. The 5 peak divine masters attacked with all their might. 3 without soul-grade divine weapons held the Wolf King back, while 2 with soul-grade divine weapons attacked. After a dozen moves, Lion finally seized the opportunity and cut off the Wolf King's head. Howl howl howl. With the death of the Wolf King, the other giant cyan wolves were in a mess. They howled and attacked randomly. After being beaten back a few times by the heaven-exterminating troop, the giant cyan wolves retreated and disappeared without a trace. Phew. Many people heaved a sigh of relief. The primeval surviving species weren't easy to deal with. If they hadn't killed the Wolf King, they would have suffered greater losses. Even so, more than 50 divine masters had been killed in the previous wave. They were divine masters. Even if all the divine masters in the heaven-exterminating army were added together, including those who were busy or in seclusion, there would not be more than 6,000 of them. It was a huge loss for so many to die in one go. "Everyone, I think we should split up," a peak-level divine master expert shouted. The others nodded. They all understood the same thing. If all 5,000 of them moved together, they would be too big of a target. They could easily attract the primeval surviving species. Only by splitting up would they be less of a target. They could move more nimbly and easily avoid the primeval surviving species. I suggest we split into small groups. Each group has no more than 10 people. We'll move separately and avoid the primeval surviving species. We'll head north and meet up at a certain location. Lion said. If they split up, even if they ran into powerful and invincible primeval surviving species, they would only lose a dozen people at most. However, if they moved together and ran into a large group of primeval surviving species, such as the wolf pack from before, and a few origin realm primeval surviving species, they would be in danger of being wiped out. Alright, I agree. I agree too. The others nodded. However, our main objective is to obtain the human king's body. It's related to the outcome of the battle between us and the heavenly palace. It's of utmost importance. We can't afford to lose it. Lu Ming and she can control the human king's body. They might play a key role in the end. I suggest we split up and have some top experts follow them to protect them. What do you think? Lion continued. I have no objections. I have no objections either. The others nodded. Although it was much safer to follow experts, the others knew that the human king's body was the key. If the heavenly palace obtained the complete human king's body, the heaven destroyer would be destroyed. Lu Ming and she were indeed key figures. It was only right that they were given special protection. Lu Ming naturally had no objections. The others immediately split into groups. Most of them were in groups of 8 or 9. After that, they flew towards the north and disappeared into the vast forest. Usually, there would be at least one expert at the 7th layer of the Divine Master realm in each group. Chapter 4662. Lu Ming's group, including Lu Ming, had a total of 9 people. The other 8 were all peak God Lord experts. 2 of them even possessed soul-grade divine weapons. Lion was one of them. There were also 8 peak God Lord experts by Shi's side. 2 of them also possessed soul-grade divine weapons. In addition, there were many experts in Tang Jun's group as well. Tang Jun was Tang Feng's daughter, so they would naturally protect her. Lu Ming, take care. We'll meet up in the north. Tang Jun came to bid farewell to Lu Ming. You too. Lu Ming smiled. Afterward, Tang Jun followed her group and disappeared into the forest. Lu Ming, let's go as well. Lion said. Lu Ming nodded. Their group also set off. They first headed west for a while, then headed north. This forest was vast and boundless. They had around 5,000 people, and they were split into over 500 small groups. They were scattered in the vast forest, like a small stone thrown into the sea, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. While they were moving forward, Lion and the other 7 experts secretly protected Lu Ming in the middle. Among them, the 2 fastest experts were scouting ahead. Once they discovered a powerful surviving species of the untainted land ahead, they would take a detour. Lu Ming was also happy to relax. With fewer people, their movements were much more nimble than before. Their speed had also increased by many times. They constantly flashed through the forest, leaving large areas behind them. Along the way, they would encounter primitive surviving species every once in a while. There were strong and weak primitive surviving species. The weak ones were equivalent to divine lords or divine emperors, while the stronger ones were divine lords. In just 3 days, Lu Ming's group had encountered over 100 divine lord primitive surviving species. As a matter of fact, they even came across 2 reciprocity primordial species, but they avoided them beforehand and took a detour. Primordial species at reciprocity all had their own territories. As long as they did not set foot in another's territory and took a detour, they would not pursue them. Along the way, Lu Ming and the others were secretly shocked. There were simply too many powerful great desolate remnant beasts on this continent. Just by traveling in a single direction, the 9 of them came across over 100 divine lord primordial species and 2 reciprocity primordial species. Coupled with the huge, azure wolves they had encountered before, there were over 600 divine lord primordial species. This was definitely only a part of the continent. The number of remnant species at the Divine Master realm on this continent was absolutely shocking. Adding them all together, they might have more Divine Masters than the entire primitive universe. This was too shocking. Anyone who could control the Great Desolate Remnant here would be able to dominate the Great Desolate Universe. It was just a continent, yet there were so many powerful Great Desolate Remnant species. Then, how many experts were there in the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch? Divine Masters were everywhere, and Origin were as numerous as dogs? That's not right. According to the records excavated from the ruins of the universe, even the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch did not have so many experts. It's impossible for Divine Masters to be everywhere. Lion shook his head. There were definitely many Divine Masters on the Great Desolate Continent. It was probably incalculable. However, they had only traveled for 3 days. As they had to be wary of powerful Great Desolate Remnant species, they did not move very quickly, nor did they travel very far. There were over 100 Divine Lord primordial species in this short distance. The density was just far too great. It had to be mentioned that the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch was shockingly vast. All the fragments of continents in the ruins of the universe and all the planets in the primitive universe were added together. Although this continent was vast, it was not as large as the 1,000-year battlefield. It was only a drop in the ocean compared to the complete Great Desolate Continent. Just how many experts were there in the Great Desolate Continent? This clearly did not match the records of the ancient records. Clearly, this continent is extraordinary. That's why it can give birth to so many powerful Great Desolate Remnant species in such a small area. Another peak Divine Master expert said. This made everyone's hearts even heavier. The more extraordinary this continent was, the more powerful the Great Desolate Remnant species would be, and the greater the pressure on them. There was even more uncertainty about the competition for the human king's body later. Later on, they would not only have to face the experts of the Heavenly Palace and Quasi-Saint tribe, but they might also have to face powerful Great Desolate Remnant species. This trip would probably be full of difficulties and dangers. Be careful! Suddenly, the voice of an expert who was scouting ahead rang in the ears of Lu Ming and the others. It was transmitted through telepathy and was full of solemnity. The hearts of Lu Ming and the others thumped. They immediately held their breaths and restrained their auras. Look ahead, a profound voice pointed ahead. There were about a dozen mountain peaks in front of them. They were extremely huge and very tall, extending all the way to the sky. The tallest mountain peak was at least 1,000,000 feet tall. However, this was not the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was that there was a giant snake coiled around this mountain peak. The giant snake began to spiral from the bottom of the mountain and continued upward, wrapping itself around the highest peak of the mountain. Terrifying. It was a terrifying giant snake. Even though it was very far away, the aura emitted by this giant snake was still terrifying. Origin Realm. This giant snake was definitely an existence of the Origin Realm. It was extremely powerful. At this moment, a sharp cry rang out in the sky. The clouds were torn apart and another huge creature appeared. It was a huge white bird. Its entire body was snow white and covered in snow white feathers. It was extremely huge, and when it spread its wings, it blotted out the sky. The huge bird swooped down and its 2 huge claws grabbed at the giant snake. The giant snake was not to be outdone. With a sharp cry, its huge body shot out like a spring and engaged in a great battle with the huge bird. Boom, 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 boom. Destructive energy swept out in all directions. The earth shook and ancient trees exploded. It was like the end of the world. Lu Ming and the others could not help but swallow their saliva. 2 Origin Realm Great Desolate Remnant species were fighting. This continent was really dangerous. Let's go! Lion transmitted. They did not dare to stay for long. They hurriedly made a detour and traveled in a different direction. Only when they could no longer hear the disturbance behind them did they let out a sigh of relief. The huge bird and snake from before were definitely not regular Origin Realm beings. They were even more powerful than regular Origin Realm beings. If they had been sucked in, they would have been done for. Fortunately, they had split up and scattered. If they had moved together with all 5,000 of them, they definitely would have been discovered and the situation would have been dire. They continued north. Although they came across a few great desolate remnant species in the next 2 days, they did not encounter any danger. Look, what's that? Suddenly, someone whispered. There was a sliver of excitement in his voice. Not far in front of them was a huge cliff. On a protruding rock on the cliff, they saw a strange little tree. Chapter 4663. It was a small, fire-red tree. It was very short, only half a meter tall, but it seemed very mystical. The tree glowed, and there was actually a miniature tree above it. It was condensed from energy and seemed to be alive, constantly running around the tree. This is a source-level divine herb, Lion said. His voice was very excited, and his eyes shone with a scorching light. A source-level divine herb. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. As the name suggested, it was definitely a divine herb that was very useful to reciprocity cultivators. Lu Ming, if you want to increase your cultivation at reciprocity, you need to absorb and refine treasures that contain origin imprints. Source-level divine herbs contain origin imprints, and they contain a very high amount of essence. Even among treasures that contain origin imprints, they are one of the best. Knowing that Lu Ming did not know much about source-level divine herbs, Gu Mo explained in a timely manner. There are no source-level divine herbs in the current primitive universe. Even in the ruins of the universe, they are extremely rare. I never thought I'd come across one here. Another peak godlord said. His eyes were also burning with desire. Source-level divine herbs were just too rare. The current primitive universe could not nurture them at all. The ruins of the universe had been severely damaged due to the war of the last epoch. The laws and mysteries within them were in chaos, so it was very difficult for them to nurture source-level divine weapons. Even though the laws and mysteries of the universe had become more orderly in the past few dozen stellar years, they could not nurture such a treasure immediately. It was not that they did not exist in the vast ruins of the universe, but they were extremely rare. Very few people could obtain them. Actually, even if someone obtained one, they would not take it out because it was just too precious. If an origin realm cultivator consumed it, it would be extremely effective in increasing their cultivation. If a peak godlord consumed it, their chances of breaking through to reciprocity would be greatly increased as well. It was no wonder that Lion and the others were so passionate about it. It was just too tempting. Even if each of them were given a leaf, it would be of great help to them in breaking through to reciprocity. However, they did not dare to act rashly because there was a primordial remnant on the protruding rock. It was a huge golden eagle. It was completely golden, as if it had been forged from gold. It was extremely similar to a golden-winged rock. The golden eagle lay lazily around the small tree, inhaling and exhaling the multicolored light emitted from the small tree. I wonder what cultivation level this golden condor has? Someone whispered. I don't know. It's too far away. I can't sense it. Lion shook his head. In the end, they decided to hide in the dark and observe carefully to see what cultivation level the golden condor was at. Or, they would wait until the golden condor left before they made their move. The golden condor had to go out to look for food. That would be their chance. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, they waited for 5 days. 5 days later, the golden condor finally made its move. It stood up, its body emitting a golden glow. A few rays of light shot out from its mouth and landed around the small tree. In the next moment, the sapling disappeared. It was actually hidden. Then, the golden condor flapped its wings and soared into the sky, rushing into the distance. So, it's the peak of the Divine Master realm. The eyes of Lion and the others flickered. When the golden condor took off, they finally sensed what level of cultivation the golden condor was at. It was at the peak of the Divine Master realm. However, the golden condor gave off a very strong sense of oppression. It was probably not an ordinary peak of the Divine Master realm. In the blink of an eye, the golden condor disappeared into the distance without a trace. Let's make our move. Lion showed a hint of joy. The group of 9 concealed their auras and quickly rushed toward the cliff. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. They arrived at the protruding rock. From afar, the protruding rock did not look very big. In fact, it was very large and spacious. There was a huge cave near the cliff. There were a few golden feathers scattered in the cave. It was obviously where the golden condor lived. However, the group only glanced around casually before their eyes fell on the spot where the sapling was. They gathered their energy in their eyes and observed carefully. "How is it?" Lion asked. "It's just a simple formation. It's easy to break." A skinny old man said. This old man was from the World Turtle Clan and was proficient in rune formations. "Then let's hurry up. If we delay any longer, we might be discovered by the golden condor." Another person urged. The old man from the World Turtle Clan nodded and waved his hands. A large number of runes spread out and shrouded the transparent void in front of them. When the void was shrouded by the runes, a golden light shield suddenly appeared in the transparent void. They could see that the soul-level divine herb was shining inside the golden light shield. At this time, 9 figures came from a forest in the distance. They came from afar and stopped in the branches of a big tree. They immediately saw Lu Ming and the others. "It's the traitors!" Lu Ming. A few cold voices sounded. These 9 figures were all from the Heavenly Human Clan. One of the young men was Lu Ming's old rival, Yi Qiuxian. The other 8 Heavenly Human Clan members were all people on par with the Lord of Heaven. Obviously, the Heavenly Palace had adopted the same plan as the Heaven Destroyer. They split up and acted separately. In addition, Yi Qiuxian's identity was not to be underestimated. He was a peerless genius of the Heavenly Human Clan and could activate the power of the Human King's body. Therefore, the Heavenly Palace had sent 8 top experts to protect Yi Qiuxian. They had just arrived from afar and saw Lu Ming and the others. As soon as he saw Lu Ming, Yi Qiuxian's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. "That's Ian's soul-level divine weapon." Then, one of the Lord of Heaven saw the soul-level divine herb and his eyes were filled with greed. "It's really Ian's soul-level divine weapon. Young Master Qiuxian, should we attack?" One of the Lord of Heaven asked. "Don't worry. Their strength is not inferior to ours. If we attack recklessly, both sides will suffer. We can ambush them in the dark and attack suddenly. We can only kill 1 or 2 of their experts before we can eliminate them." Yi Qiuxian said. "Young Master Qiuxian is right." The others nodded and withdrew their auras. Suddenly Yi Qiuxian and the others saw a golden light spot in the distance that was flying towards them rapidly. No, to be precise, it was flying towards Lu Ming and the others at the cliff. The heavens are on my side. Let's just wait and take advantage of the situation." Yi Qiuxian was overjoyed. At the same time, Lu Ming and the others were also shocked. They had also noticed the golden light spot. It was obviously the golden eagle that had flown away previously. They did not expect it to return so quickly. Or could it be that the golden eagle would sense it as soon as they touched the formation set up by the other party? That was probably the case. Although the concealment formation set up by the golden eagle was simple and crude, it would sense it as soon as they touched it and come back quickly. Chapter 4664. Break the Array. Lion roared. His muscles bulged, and his body swelled to a height of 100 feet. He was ready to fight. "Break it!" The old man of the world divine turtle shouted as more runes appeared from his hands. These runes were like small snakes, desperately drilling into the light shield. "Hurry up! Didn't you say it's easy to break?" Lion roared. "Even if it's easy to break, it will take time. It hasn't even been a minute." The world turtle elder replied. Lion was speechless. Yes, breaking an array usually took at least a few hours, or even a few days. Some arrays could take many years to break. It had been less than a minute, and it looked like it was about to break. It was indeed easy. However, the golden condor was about to arrive. There was a loud bang. The light shield was finally broken, and the source-level divine weapon was completely revealed. The golden condor let out a sharp screech, and its eyes were full of anger. It flapped its wings, and dozens of golden sword lights flew out of its wings, attacking Lu Ming and the others. "Hurry up and dig out the source-level divine medicine. We'll deal with this golden condor." Lion shouted. He took a step forward and rushed out. He brandished the saber in his hand and slashed out dozens of saber lights, which collided with the dozens of golden lights. A series of collision sounds were heard. The saber lights and sword lights dissipated, but the golden condor did not stop. It quickly pounced on Lion, and its sharp claws reached for Lion's head. Lion slashed with all his might. Clang! The saber hit the golden condor's sharp claws, and there was a sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew everywhere. The next moment, Lion's expression changed drastically. Its huge body shook violently, and it was thrown backward. It smashed into the cliff wall, causing the entire cliff to shake. The golden condor wanted to continue attacking and kill Lion in one go, but the other experts had already made their move. The 6 Peak Divine Lord experts attacked the golden condor together, 6 sharp attacks aimed at 6 different parts of the golden condor. The golden condor did not continue to chase Lion. Its wings swept out like golden sabers, and all the attacks in front of it were destroyed. As for the other 3 attacks, they landed on its back. The golden condor's body shook, and it was sent flying. However, it was not injured at all. It was blocked by its thick feathers. So strong. Lu Ming's heart trembled. The strength of this golden condor was truly astonishing. Even the lion was sent flying with a single strike. One must know that Lion had used his source-level divine weapon earlier, but he had failed to sever the golden condor's sharp claws. Although this golden eagle only had the cultivation of a peak divine master, its strength far surpassed that of an ordinary peak divine master. It was no wonder that he could monopolize a source-level divine herb, and the other remnant beasts of the primordial era did not dare to fight over it. And with such a delay, the old man of the world turtle had completely dug out the origin-level divine medicine, including the roots, and put it into his storage ring. Seeing that the source-level elixir had been dug out, the golden condor let out a sharp screech and madly pounced towards the world turtle elder. However, Lion and the others had already made their move. The 7 experts surrounded the golden condor. The old man of the world turtle stood beside Lu Ming and did not make a move. Obviously, he was protecting Lu Ming. "Senior, you should attack as well. Don't worry about me," Lu Ming said. Although he could not interfere in such a battle, he could still protect himself. "It's fine. The 7 of them are enough to deal with this golden condor," the old man of the world turtle elder said. The 7 experts joined forces, and 2 of them had source-level divine weapons. Their strength was indeed very strong, and they were able to suppress the golden condor. However, the golden condor's defense was too amazing. They could not kill the golden condor in a short time. The defense of the thick feathers was too amazing. Even source-level divine weapons could not penetrate the thick feathers. "You guys hold it back. The 2 of us will attack its vital points," Lion roared. The golden condor was not without weaknesses. Like the eyes and neck of the golden condor. Although the golden condor's neck was also covered with feathers, the feathers were just fluff. It was relatively soft and its defense was much weaker. However, the golden eagle used its sharp claws and wings to cover its eyes and neck tightly. Their attacks were unable to be effective. Immediately, the 5 experts without source-level divine weapons used all their strength to pin down the golden condor. They attacked its wings and claws to create flaws in its defense. Lion and another expert with a source-level divine weapon attacked the golden condor's eyes and neck with all their strength. After a dozen moves, Lion finally seized the opportunity and slashed the golden condor's neck. The source-level divine weapon's power played a role. It cut through the thick layer of feathers and left a deep wound on the golden condor's neck that went straight to the bone. Feathers flew and blood flowed. "It's effective!" Lion and the others' eyes lit up. Sure enough, the source-level divine weapon could cut through the feathers on the golden condor's neck and cause serious damage to the golden condor. With 2 more attacks like this, the golden condor's head would definitely be cut off. Caw! The golden condor was injured and went completely crazy. Its body emitted a dazzling golden light. Many feathers on its wings flew out and turned into sharp swords, stabbing at the 7 experts. There were at least hundreds of sword lights that repelled the 7 experts all at once. After repelling the 7 experts, the golden condor screamed and flapped its wings rapidly, pouncing on Lion. A pair of sharp claws grabbed at Lion at an astonishing speed. Lion was repelled by the sword light. He couldn't dodge in time and could only fight back. But at the critical moment, he couldn't use 100% of his strength and was caught by one of the golden condor's claws. Blood splattered. A small part of Lion's left body was torn off. It was a horrible sight. Lion let out an angry roar and retreated. Block it. The other experts also reacted. They rushed over and launched a series of attacks. Only then did they block the golden condor's attack and save Lion's life. Not good. The old man of the world turtle finally couldn't stand it anymore. He waved his hand, and 12 formation flags appeared in the void. The formation flags shone brightly, and countless runes filled the air. These runes intertwined together, forming a huge chain that wrapped around the golden condor. At the same time, the old man of the world turtle quickly formed seals with both hands. More rune arrays appeared around him. All of them were entrapment arrays. All of them shrouded the golden condor. Caw-caw-caw, the golden condor kept screeching and struggling crazily. Those rune arrays trembled violently and kept exploding. Let's attack together. The old man of the world turtle roared. In fact, there was no need for him to roar. The others also attacked. All kinds of attacks were constantly directed at the golden condor. With so many experts and the array of the old man of the world turtle, the golden condor was finally trapped and its movements became slow. Chapter 4665. The golden condor was enveloped by layers of formations. Coupled with the attacks of the other 6 experts, the golden condor's body was covered in runes and its movements began to slow down. Kill! Lion roared. Ignoring his injuries, he wielded his saber with one hand and charged forward. The saber landed on the golden condor's neck, on the wound that had been left behind earlier. More than half of the golden condor's neck had been cut off. More than half of the bones in its neck had been broken. Its entire head had almost been chopped off. The golden condor went berserk and struggled madly. The runes continued to explode as it struggled to break free. Kill! Lion roared again and slashed down with his saber. This time, the golden condor's head was completely cut off. With its head cut off and its soul destroyed, the golden condor stopped struggling. Its aura rapidly dissipated as it died. Huff, huff, huff. The 8 experts, including Lion, were constantly panting. The golden condor was just too powerful. It had far surpassed the strength of an ordinary peak god lord. Although it was not comparable to the origin realm, it was definitely an invincible existence among peak god lords. The 8 of them were peak god lords, and 2 of them had even possessed source-grade divine weapons. They had paid a heavy price to kill it. Even the lion was heavily injured. Lion took out a few divine pills and swallowed them to heal his injuries. It's a pity that the golden condor did not manage to kill 1 or 2 people. Not far away, a lord of heaven sighed. Although it did not manage to kill 1 or 2 people, they have expended a lot of energy to deal with the golden condor. That primordial god has also been heavily injured and his strength has been greatly reduced. Our strength has already far surpassed theirs. It's time for us to attack, Yi Qiuxian said coldly. Yi Qiuxian and the 8 Lord of Heaven level experts concealed their auras and quietly approached Lu Ming's group. On the other side, Lion and the others had collected the golden condor's corpse and were preparing to leave. The golden condor's entire body was a treasure. They naturally could not let it go to waste. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. He felt an inexplicable sense of danger. Everyone be careful. There's danger. Lu Ming roared. Lion and the others were also very alert. They immediately reacted and scanned their surroundings. Damn it, attack! Yi Qiuxian shouted. Swish! Swish! 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven immediately rushed over. Before they arrived, 8 terrifying attacks were already flying towards Lu Ming and the others. It's the heavenly human tribe. Defend! The old man of the world turtle roared and waved his hand. A huge turtle shell appeared in the sky and blocked the attack. The others also moved to block the attack. However, Lion was not in peak condition. The golden condor's previous attack had seriously injured him. Although he had unleashed his full strength and killed the golden condor with 2 consecutive strikes, he had also exhausted the last of his strength. At this time, although he had blocked the opponent's attack, he kept retreating. Gather together and form a defense. The old man of the world turtle roared. With a wave of his hand, more than 30 array flags flew out and formed a huge defensive array. The others also used their defensive secret techniques. They surrounded Lu Ming and Lion in the middle. As soon as the other party attacked, they could feel that the strength of the heavenly human tribe was very shocking. All 8 of them were at the level of the Lord of Heaven. They were not people that Lu Ming could deal with. Lion was also seriously injured and could not deal with them. Kill! The 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven surrounded Lu Ming and the others. The supreme power of heaven erupted and turned into a terrifying destructive force, attacking Lu Ming and the others. However, the experts on the Heaven Destroyer's side only defended and did not attack. For a time, they blocked the attacks of the other party. Attack, continue to attack. They are exhausted from the battle with the golden condor. Sooner or later, they will not be able to hold on. Yi Qiuxian walked through the air and stood high up in the sky as he shouted. Swish! Swish! The 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven attacked with all their strength. Among the 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven, 2 of them had source-level divine weapons. The attacks of these 2 were the most terrifying and made the defense of the Heaven Destroyer in danger. Lu Ming, this will be your burial ground. Yi Qiuxian said coldly. Yi Qiuxian, you only know how to hide in the dark and attack when we are injured. Is this the style of the top genius of the heavenly human tribe? Lu Ming retorted. Lu Ming, I can give you a chance. Come out and fight me alone. This time, I will not lose. I will kill you. Yi Qiuxian was full of confidence. Of course, Lu Ming would not go out and fight Yi Qiuxian alone. If he went out, who knew if the Lord of Heaven would attack him directly? The Heaven Destroyer's side defended with all their strength while the Heavenly Palace's side attacked with all their might, trying to break the defense of the Heaven Destroyer. In the blink of an eye, dozens of moves had passed. The defense of the Heaven Destroyer became a little unstable and was almost broken through several times. After all, they had used all their strength in the battle with the Golden Condor and had lost a lot of energy. In addition, Lion was seriously injured and lost a powerful combat force. The Heavenly Palace had 2 Lord of Heaven who had source-level divine weapons. The gap between them was not small. As time passed, the gap between them would be more obvious. Let's break out. Lion roared. Although he was trying his best to heal his injuries, the time was too short and his recovery was limited. Charge! They rushed in one direction, trying to break out. However, when they turned their defense into offense, the defense was naturally weakened. Break for me! One of the Lord of Heaven who had a source-level divine weapon seized the opportunity and stabbed his sword with all his strength. In an instant, it broke through 3 layers of defense. The sharp sword light penetrated the shoulder of one of the Heaven Destroyer's experts. This expert could not help but retreat continuously. The defense formation was torn apart. Kill! The other Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Palace seized the opportunity and attacked the torn gap with terrifying attacks. Block it! The Heaven Destroyer wanted to resist, but it was too late. The defense was completely torn apart, and they couldn't help but retreat again and again. The distance between each other was pulled apart. Kill! One of the Lord of Heaven targeted an expert of the Heaven Destroyer and attacked him. The 2 exchanged a few moves in a row and had already left the battlefield and killed their way to a distance. The other Lord of Heaven also attacked, and in the blink of an eye, it became a chaotic battle. Lu Ming die. Several Lord of Heaven stared at Lu Ming and wanted to kill Lu Ming. Lu Ming, the defense has been broken, we can only fight for ourselves. Seize the opportunity to escape. We will hold these people back. The powerhouse of the world turtle roared. He continuously made seals and turned into a chain that wrapped around Lu Ming. Yes, we will hold them back. Lu Ming, you escape and meet up with the others in the north. Lion spoke as well. He swallowed several divine pills in succession, erupting with his remaining strength. With a loud roar, his body rapidly swelled up, transforming into an incomparably gigantic lion-like beast. This was his true form. Chapter 4666. Lion reverted to his original form. He held the saber in one of his claws and slashed away several attacks. The old man with the turtle took the opportunity to fling Lu Ming out and sent him flying into the distance. "I'm too weak." Lu Ming clenched his fists tightly and his bones cracked. His heart was filled with anger, and he felt extremely sullen. Whether it was the battle with the Golden Condor or the battle with the Heavenly Palace experts, he couldn't interfere. In short, he was too weak. If he interfered, he would only be a hindrance. Not only would it be useless, but it would also harm Lion and the others. After the old man of the world turtle threw Lu Ming out, the few lords of heaven wanted to chase after Lu Ming. However, they were held back by Lion, the old man of the world turtle, and the others. Lu Ming had a forbidden body and his future was limitless. Moreover, he was crucial in obtaining the human king's body. Even if they had to die, they couldn't let anything happen to Lu Ming. "Lu Ming, don't even think about leaving." Yi Qiuxian had been staring at Lu Ming. When he saw Lu Ming being flung away, Yi Qiuxian unleashed all his strength and chased after Lu Ming. The World Turtle Elder and the others couldn't stop Yi Qiuxian. It was already good enough that they could hold back the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming was flung tens of thousands of miles away before he could stabilize himself. However, Yi Qiuxian caught up with him immediately. "Lu Ming, don't leave if you have the guts. Fight with me," Yi Qiuxian roared. His speed was extremely fast and he traveled tens of thousands of miles in an instant. "Do you think I'm afraid of you? If you want to fight, let's fight." Lu Ming's voice was filled with killing intent. He stopped and held the war god's spear in his hand as he faced Yi Qiuxian. He had been holding back his anger for a long time and had nowhere to vent it. He wasn't a match for the Lord of Heaven. However, why would he be afraid of Yi Qiuxian? Buzz. The war god's spear vibrated and turned into a dazzling spear light, thrusting toward Yi Qiuxian. Good timing. When Yi Qiuxian saw that Lu Ming was not trying to escape, he was overjoyed. He bellowed out, and 4 types of heaven's powers appeared. They turned into 4 beams of sword light that slashed out at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's palm shook and the war god's spear vibrated once more. The spear light transformed into 4 beams and collided with Yi Qiuxian's 4 sword beams. Boom, 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 boom. 4 consecutive booming sounds rang out as the spear light and the sword light disappeared at the same time. However, Lu Ming's body shook violently, and he couldn't help but madly retreat. The power of a 6th-tier divine master is indeed powerful. Lu Ming muttered. Yi Qiuxian's cultivation level was 1 level higher than his. In a head-on clash, Yi Qiuxian was at a disadvantage. "Lu Ming, I will kill you today." Yi Qiuxian stepped in the air, his white robes fluttering in the wind like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Perfect heaven's energy appeared, and 4 swords of different colors floated around him, their sword intent soaring to the heavens. "Is that so?" Lu Ming sneered and suddenly threw out the war god's spear in his hand. The war god's spear pierced towards Yi Qiuxian like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, Lu Ming's hands rapidly formed seals, unleashing the desolation style. A continent appeared above Yi Qiuxian's head, pressing down on him. Rumble. Lu Ming's desolation style was getting more and more powerful. Before it even landed, the void was already exploding. "Lu Ming, this move of yours is useless against me. Sword formation activate." Yi Qiuxian roared, and the 4 swords around him continued to revolve, turning into a powerful sword formation. Sword light soared to the sky, slashing forward and above. With a loud clang, the war god's spear was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. It was struck by the sword light continuously, shaking violently and flying back. At the same time, even more sword light bombarded the desolation continent, tearing it apart. Lu Ming grabbed the war god's spear that was flying back and unleashed the sky-breaking style, becoming one with the spear and piercing towards Yi Qiuxian. He held the spear with one hand, while the other hand continued to condense the desolation continent, blasting it towards Yi Qiuxian. However, the sword array controlled by Yi Qiuxian was extremely powerful. Dense sword gleams burst forth continuously. Lu Ming broke through more than 10 sword auras consecutively. However, his body shook violently and he retreated rapidly. There were several wounds on his arms. They had been cut open by the sword auras. One had to admit that Yi Qiuxian's combat strength was really strong. Back in the Taishang Immortal City battle, the two of them were at the same level. Although Lu Ming defeated Yi Qiuxian, it wasn't an easy victory. The two of them exchanged many moves before the outcome was decided. In a battle of the same level, Yi Qiuxian wasn't much weaker than Lu Ming. Now that his cultivation was one level higher than Lu Ming, it was naturally difficult for Lu Ming to match him. But after sending Lu Ming flying with the sword formation, Yi Qiuxian charged towards Lu Ming with boundless sword light. The sword qi whistled, stabbing towards Lu Ming. This was because the sword qi was formed by the perfect power of heaven. Every ray of sword qi was extremely powerful. Lu Ming brandished the war god's spear and attacked with all his might. In an instant, hundreds of spear lights were shot out, but they still couldn't block the sword qi. Lu Ming, let me help you. At this moment, Qiuqiu opened its mouth and rushed out, transforming into a huge halberd. It slashed out, slashing at the sword qi that filled the sky. With Qiuqiu's help, the pressure on Lu Ming was greatly reduced. He finally managed to block Yi Qiuxian's attack. However, the result was that both he and Qiuqiu were sent flying at the same time. This guy's strength is really shocking. If I hadn't broken through, I wouldn't have been able to block it, Qiuqiu muttered. That's right, Qiuqiu was now a 5th-tier Divine Master. When it was a 4th-tier Divine Master, Qiuqiu had swallowed 2 semi-finished source-level divine weapons. Later on, Lu Ming gave Qiuqiu 3 damaged source-level divine weapons to swallow. With so many semi-finished and damaged source-level divine weapons, coupled with the refinement during this period, Qiuqiu had finally broken through, reaching the 5th tier from the 4th-tier Divine Master realm. Moreover, it was at the peak of the 5th-tier Divine Master realm. At the peak of the 5th-tier Divine Master realm, Qiuqiu's fighting strength was extremely shocking. After all, it could evolve the attack of a source-level divine weapon. Qiuqiu, let's attack first and confuse him. Then, you seize the opportunity to use an illusory formation to affect him. I'll use my strongest attack, Lu Ming transmitted to Qiuqiu. Lu Ming still had a trump card, which was the power of origin. However, origin energy could only be used once. Thus, it had to be used at the most critical moment. The mirror that Qiuqiu had transformed into could shoot out a beam of light and had the effect of an illusory formation. As long as it affected Yi Qiuxian, it would be the time for him to use his strongest attack. Alright, Qiuqiu replied. Instead of retreating, the two of them advanced and joined forces to attack Yi Qiuxian. Qiuqiu transformed into a war halberd. It was huge like a mountain range and constantly hacked at Yi Qiuxian. Lu Ming, on the other hand, used the sky-splitting form and the desolation form to attack. In an instant, he had exchanged more than a dozen blows with Yi Qiuxian. Qiuqiu, now's the time, Lu Ming transmitted to Qiuqiu. Qiuqiu immediately transformed into a mirror and shot out a beam of light. This beam of light directly enveloped Yi Qiuxian. Yi Qiuxian's gaze became sluggish. Swish! How could Lu Ming miss this opportunity? He used the sky-splitting form and turned into a beam of spear light that pierced toward Yi Qiuxian's forehead. Chapter 4667. Lu Ming performed the sky-breaking technique and became one with his spear as he stabbed towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead. He was about to reach it. Break! Yi Qiuxian roared as the perfect power of the heavens surged out of his body like a tidal wave, instantly shattering Qiuqiu's light beam. Kill! Yi Qiuxian roared as his sword qi soared into the sky. The 4-colored battle swords merged into one and slashed towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming's pupils constricted as he forcibly stopped his attack. He performed the greater teleportation technique and moved to the side to avoid the sword. Qiuqiu also quickly retreated and flew to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming, I didn't expect the opponent to be so powerful to be able to break through my illusions so quickly. Qiuqiu said regretfully. The perfect power of the heavens is indeed powerful and cannot be underestimated. Lu Ming said. He could tell that Yi Qiuxian had relied on the perfect power of the heavens to break through Qiuqiu's illusion so quickly. In addition, Yi Qiuxian's cultivation was one level higher than Qiuqiu's and his willpower was extremely strong. That was why he could break through Qiuqiu's illusion in an instant. Lu Ming, you have succeeded in infuriating me. Yi Qiuxian said coldly as the killing intent in his eyes was extremely strong. In fact, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Just now, if he had been a little slower, he would have been hit by Lu Ming. It was extremely dangerous to be hit in such a situation. He had almost lost again. It was unforgivable. He grabbed at the air and a purple gold battle sword appeared in Yi Qiuxian's hand. Source-level weapon. Without a doubt, it was an source-level weapon. Previously, Yi Qiuxian had not used an source-level weapon. The main reason was that Yi Qiuxian's sword formation was not suitable for an source-level weapon. Unless Yi Qiuxian could gather 4 source-level weapon battle swords and combine them with his sword formation, then the power would be terrifying. But how could it be so easy to gather 4 source-level weapon battle swords? Lu Ming, I'll let you experience the true power of perfect heaven's energy. Yi Qiuxian coldly spoke. The 4 four-colored battle swords actually gathered towards the source-grade divine weapon battle sword, showing signs of fusing into one. This was what Yi Qiuxian had learned from the Yi Immortal during this period of time. His talent was unparalleled and he was exceptionally intelligent. With just a few pointers from the Yi Immortal, his use of the perfect power of heaven had reached a whole new level. Yi Qiuxian's body was like a bolt of lightning as he dashed towards Lu Ming. As he slashed out with his sword, a shocking sword light burst out towards Lu Ming with extreme speed. Lu Ming struck out with his palm, activating the primal desolation style. A huge continent appeared in front of him, blocking his path. However, the sword light slashed down, splitting the continent into 2 halves. The sword light did not stop there, continuing to slash towards Lu Ming. Heaven Breaker! Lu Ming let out a long howl, displaying the heaven-breaking style. At the same time, Qiuqiu also attacked with all his might. However, even if the two of them worked together, it was still not enough. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu were both sent flying tens of thousands of miles away. Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. His arm was filled with numerous wounds as blood flowed continuously. The previous sword strike had injured him quite badly. Qiuqiu, are you all right? Lu Ming asked. I'm fine, Lu Ming. We can't fight head-on. We still have to prioritize defense. Qiuqiu replied and dashed towards Lu Ming. At this moment, Yi Qiuxian's second sword strike had also arrived. After sending Lu Ming flying with his first strike, he immediately attacked with his second strike. He became one with his sword and pierced towards Lu Ming. However, Qiuqiu had also reached Lu Ming's body, turning into an armor that covered Lu Ming's entire body. On the other hand, Lu Ming brandished his battle god spear and swept it out. With a loud clang, Lu Ming and Yi Qiuxian exchanged blows. His arm shook violently and his bones broke. The battle god's spear almost flew out. Die! Yi Qiuxian shouted coldly. His battle sword slashed down on Lu Ming's body again. With a loud clang, Lu Ming's body retreated rapidly. However, Yi Qiuxian did not manage to break through Lu Ming's defense. The armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into was the source-level armor that he had devoured. The battle sword in Yi Qiuxian's hand was not of a higher grade than the battle god spear. Naturally, it would not be able to break through. Yi Qiuxian, is this all you've got? Lu Ming sneered sarcastically. Do you think hiding in your turtle shell is of any use? Watch me break your turtle shell. Yi Qiuxian snorted coldly. He pushed his perfect heaven's force to the limit and poured it into his source-level sword before swinging it at Lu Ming again. This time, Lu Ming did not try to dodge or block. He allowed Yi Qiuxian's sword to strike him. With a loud clang, sparks flew everywhere. Lu Ming was sent flying by the powerful impact. However, the armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into did not break. Instead, it deflected Yi Qiuxian's combat sword. The armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into was Yi Chu Tianji's source-level armor. It was of a similar grade to Yi Qiuxian's sword. Yi Qiuxian could not break through it at all. Of course, It would be different if an Origin Realm expert wielding a source-level armor. Breaking through the armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into would be a piece of cake. Unfortunately, Yi Qiuxian did not possess the strength to do so. Lu Ming, you can only rely on a metallic life form. What kind of ability is that? If you have the guts, fight me head-on. Yi Qiuxian roared. You have the nerve to say that when you want to fight me with a cultivation that's one level higher than mine. If you have the ability, fight me at the same level. Lu Ming sneered in response. Yi Qiuxian was speechless. His face sank. Through the exchange of blows earlier, he learned a cruel truth. That was, he was no match for Lu Ming even if they were of the same level. This made him extremely displeased. It's enough that I'm invincible among the younger generation. Lu Ming died. Yi Qiuxian roared in his heart. He swung his sword at Lu Ming again. However, this strike tore through space and produced a terrifying whistle. It was even more powerful than before. Oh no, it's Origin energy. Lu Ming immediately sensed it. Yi Qiuxian had also condensed an Origin energy seed. Although he could not compare to Lu Ming, he could still unleash an attack. Combined with a source-level weapon, its power was extremely shocking. It's just one move. I can block it. Qiuqiu's response made Lu Ming relax. Clang. In the next moment, Yi Qiuxian's battle sword continued to slash at Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's body flew out like a cannonball and crashed into the cliff in the distance. A violent explosion erupted and a huge hole was formed in the cliff. However, he managed to block it in the end. There was only a mark on the armor that Qiuqiu had turned into. It was not broken. Damn it! Yi Qiuxian roared. He had already used all his means but still could not break through Lu Ming's defense. With a bang, Lu Ming rushed out of the hole in the cliff and charged at Yi Qiuxian at an extremely fast speed. Qiuqiu, illusion! Lu Ming shouted. Have a taste of my strongest move. Qiuqiu shouted and flew out from Lu Ming's body and turned into a mirror. Lu Ming was about to launch his counterattack. Yi Qiuxian had used all his strength to attack Lu Ming just now. Especially just now, he had used all his Origin energy and Perfect Heaven's power to activate the source-level weapon. This was very energy-consuming. Now Yi Qiuxian was in a weakened state. Lu Ming was waiting for this opportunity. Chapter 4668. Qiuqiu turned into a mirror and shot out a beam of light that shrouded Yi Qiuxian within. Yi Qiuxian's eyes fell into a daze. Swoosh! Lu Ming attacked with all his might. He unleashed the sky-breaking form and became one with his spear. He turned into a dazzling spear light that pierced towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead. This time, Yi Qiuxian did not manage to break free from Qiuqiu's illusion. Previously, Yi Qiuxian was in his peak condition and could break free from the illusion with his perfect power. However, this time, he did not react even when Lu Ming's spear light was nearing him. The sharp spear light pierced Yi Qiuxian's forehead. However, just as the spear tip pierced the skin between Yi Qiuxian's eyebrows, dense runes suddenly appeared. These runes were like a net that intertwined together to form a strong defense that blocked Lu Ming's attack. The strong impact also woke Yi Qiuxian up completely. Lu Ming! Yi Qiuxian roared and wanted to attack with all his might. Explode! Lu Ming roared and his Origin energy erupted. Previously, Lu Ming wanted to attack with his Origin energy. However, because Yi Qiuxian quickly broke free from Qiuqiu, Lu Ming stopped in time and did not use his Origin energy. If he didn't use it now, when would he? The Origin energy surged into the War God Spear and exploded, activating a trace of the War God Spear's power. Lu Ming's attack reached its peak. A terrifying power erupted from the War God Spear's tip, causing the runes in between Yi Qiuxian's eyebrows to tremble violently. Some small cracks appeared on it. However, in the end, he was not pierced through. The powerful impact caused Yi Qiuxian's body to explosively retreat several thousand miles. Only then did he manage to stabilize himself. However, he felt dizzy and his vision darkened. Although the attack just now had been blocked, the powerful impact on his head still had a great impact on him. Swoosh! Just as Yi Qiuxian stabilized himself, Lu Ming's attack had arrived. Lu Ming would not miss such a good opportunity to kill him while he was down. Swoosh! The war god's spear pierced towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead once more. However, this attack did not contain any source energy. Thus, it was blocked by the runes on Yi Qiuxian's forehead. Yi Qiuxian's body was once again sent flying by the powerful impact. As expected, these guys all have life-saving treasures. Lu Ming snorted coldly in his heart. Yi Xian also possessed a life-saving treasure that the master of the heavenly palace had planted in him, allowing him to block an attack from a reciprocity expert. Yi Qiuxian also had a life-saving treasure. Although it was not as strong as Yi Xian's, it was still very shocking. It was not something that Lu Ming could break. However, Lu Ming would not give up so easily. He executed the Greater Aurora technique and in a flash, he quickly caught up with Yi Qiuxian and swept out with his spear. This time around, they were not attacking Yi Qiuxian's head. Instead, they were attacking his body. His glabella was protected. Could it be that his body was protected as well? As expected, it really was protected. When Lu Ming's spear was about to strike Yi Qiuxian's body, the runes on Yi Qiuxian's forehead rapidly expanded and enveloped his entire body. Boom! The war god's spear was blocked by the runes when it struck Yi Qiuxian's body. However, Lu Ming immediately discovered that the runes that enveloped Yi Qiuxian's body were much weaker than the runes on his forehead. Their defenses were much weaker as well. When the war god's spear struck them, the runes began to shake violently, as if they were about to collapse at any time. A powerful force directly seeped into the runes and struck Yi Qiuxian's body. With a bang, Yi Qiuxian was blown several thousand kilometers away once more. This time, he was no longer unscathed. Many parts of his body had exploded and several dozen of his bones had been broken. In particular, the place where the war god's spear had struck had almost been pierced through. If it were not for the defense of the runes, Yi Qiuxian's body would have been reduced to mush. The intense pain also woke Yi Qiuxian up from his stupor. Arg! Lu Ming, I'll kill you! Yi Qiuxian roared. Yi Qiuxian, to think that you would bring along a life-saving treasure when you're out adventuring. You're indeed a flower in a greenhouse. You're not fit to be mentioned in the same breath as me. You'll be trampled under my feet forever. Lu Ming's cold and disdainful voice rang out. He had initially treated Yi Qiuxian as an opponent on the same level as him. But now, he had changed his mind. Yi Qiuxian would bring along life-saving treasures when he was out adventuring. Unknowingly, he would have a reliance on Yi Qiuxian and wouldn't allow himself to truly experience life and death. Even though his safety was guaranteed. Geniuses who couldn't truly experience life and death wouldn't be able to truly reach the pinnacle. Sooner or later, a loophole would appear. Even though Lu Ming had some trump cards, those trump cards were obtained by Lu Ming through life and death experiences. They were completely different from life-saving treasures given by others. Therefore, Lu Ming no longer treated Yi Qiuxian as a true opponent. Yi Qiuxian wasn't fit to be his opponent. In terms of talent, Yi Qiuxian's talent was indisputable. There was probably no one in the younger generation of the primitive universe who could compare to him. Even Lu Ming himself couldn't compare to Yi Qiuxian in terms of talent. But why was Lu Ming able to defeat Yi Qiuxian? It was because Lu Ming had experienced life and death experiences time and time again, which allowed him to transform continuously. Whether it was his body, mind, or potential, they were all transforming continuously. That was why he could trample Yi Qiuxian under his feet. As for Yi Qiuxian, even though his talent was unparalleled, he couldn't truly experience life and death. With a reliance, he would lack the transformation in the future. Lu Ming was confident that as time passed, Yi Qiuxian wouldn't be worthy to be his opponent. As Lu Ming's voice rang out, the war god's spear didn't stop and continued to attack Yi Qiuxian. Even though Lu Ming was confident that he could forever trample Yi Qiuxian under his feet, Yi Qiuxian's talent was still too great. Once he grew up, he would be a huge threat. It was naturally best to get rid of him as soon as possible. The war god's spear was incomparably huge. It continued to attack Yi Qiuxian's body, wanting to destroy Yi Qiuxian's body in one go. But before the attack could even get close to Yi Qiuxian, Lu Ming's hair stood on end. He could feel a fatal danger approaching rapidly. Withdraw! Lu Ming roared as he forcibly withdrew his attack. He executed the great aurora art and turned into an aurora as he retreated rapidly. Swoosh! In the sky, a long spear fell from the sky and pierced the ground where Lu Ming was just a moment ago. It blasted a huge hole in the ground. What a terrifying attack! The Peak Almighty! Lu Ming was secretly shocked. He didn't stop and continued to retreat. In the sky, a figure stepped down from the sky. It was a heavenly monarch realm expert from the heavenly human race. It was one of the people who had attacked Lion and the others previously. Qiuxian, are you all right? That Lord of Heaven looked at Yi Qiuxian. Chapter 4669. The Lord of Heaven of the heavenly human tribe was a little worried when he saw Yi Qiuxian chasing after Lu Ming alone. After fighting with Lion and the others for a while, he left the battlefield and chased after Yi Qiuxian and Lu Ming. Anyway, Lion was seriously injured and the others were exhausted. It was enough to leave the other 7 experts. On the other hand, Yi Qiuxian was more important. He was afraid that something might happen to Yi Qiuxian. After all, Yi Qiuxian was one of the only 3 people in the history of the heavenly human tribe who could control the perfect power of heaven. He was too important to the heavenly human tribe. Although on the surface, Yi Qiuxian's combat strength was definitely stronger than Lu Ming's. However, his opponent was Lu Ming. Lu Ming had the forbidden body. He was still worried. Sure enough, when he arrived, he saw that Yi Qiuxian was completely at a disadvantage. He was continuously bombarded by Lu Ming and could only rely on his life-saving treasure to survive. Although he found it unbelievable and didn't know how Yi Qiuxian could be defeated, he attacked without hesitation. That was why the scene just now happened. Kill him for me, Yi Qiuxian roared. His eyes were red and he seemed to have gone crazy. He was originally elegant and smart. He wouldn't lose his composure like this. The main reason was that Lu Ming had dealt him too big of a blow. He was defeated twice by Lu Ming. This time, he was defeated by Lu Ming despite having a higher cultivation base. What made him angrier was Lu Ming's last words. A flower in a greenhouse would never be a match for Lu Ming. In fact, he also understood that Lu Ming was right. He went out to train and brought along life-saving treasures. No matter what, he had a reliance in his heart and couldn't really experience life and death. He understood all of this. However, he couldn't do it. It wasn't easy for him to achieve his current status. His talent was unparalleled and could be said to be the #1 in the current universe. Even in the history of the heavenly human tribe, only 2 legends could be compared to him. His future was bright. He was destined to step onto the peak of the universe and become an invincible overlord. If he didn't bring any life-saving treasures with him, what if he died? Ever since he had grasped the perfect heavenly energy, he no longer had that adventurous spirit. If this continued, he really wouldn't be a match for Lu Ming in the future. Therefore, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He became even more furious. He wanted to kill Lu Ming even more. As long as Lu Ming died, who among the younger generation could be his opponent? The patriarch of the heavenly human tribe, Yi Immortal, was naturally not included. Yi Qiuxian, consider yourself lucky. Lu Ming's voice rang out, but he didn't stop. He retreated at top speed, flying off into the distance. When the Lord of Heaven descended, Lu Ming knew that he would not be able to kill Yi Qiuxian. The Lord of Heaven was in existence at the peak of the Divine Master level. Lu Ming was definitely no match for him. The difference was too great, so he could only retreat. You want to leave? Did you ask for my permission? The Lord of Heaven said coldly. He rushed out and chased after Lu Ming. The Lord of Heaven's speed was extremely fast. However, Lu Ming's great ultimate light skill and great teleportation skill were both extremely fast. Even if the Lord of Heaven wanted to catch up, it wouldn't be that easy. The 2 of them, one chasing and one fleeing, disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. However, the distance between the 2 of them was still shrinking. This was because Lu Ming had to pay attention to one thing while escaping in front. That was the ancient remnant beasts of this continent. He had to pay attention to those powerful ancient remnant beasts. He was afraid that they would suddenly attack him. If he saw a powerful ancient remnant beast, he would have to take a detour. Otherwise, if he were to be attacked by the ancient remnant beasts with the Lord of Heaven behind him, it would be really dangerous. As for the Lord of Heaven behind him, he didn't have to worry so much. Since Lu Ming wasn't in danger when he flew past, he naturally wouldn't be in too much danger if he followed Lu Ming's route closely. Therefore, the distance between the two of them was still shrinking rapidly. In just a little more than 10 minutes, the distance between the two of them was very close. Kill! The Lord of Heaven behind him was wearing a purple robe. He held a purple gold battle spear in his hand. The spear stabbed out, and a huge spear shadow stabbed towards Lu Ming. Its speed was so fast that it caught up with Lu Ming in an instant. Lu Ming waved his battle god spear to block, but the moment the two of them collided, the spear light formed by the battle god spear was shattered. Lu Ming could only dodge with all his might. Finally, he narrowly avoided the attack. However, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven's attack came again. This time, he shook his spear, and hundreds of spear shadows pierced through the void and stabbed towards Lu Ming. The spear shadows almost covered the entire void, blocking all of Lu Ming's escape routes. This time, Lu Ming couldn't dodge, so he could only take it head-on. "I hope I can block it," Lu Ming roared in his heart. He waved his palm and performed the primitive style, which turned into a continent in front of him. At the same time, his body glowed, and all kinds of defensive ancient secret skills were also performed. There were hundreds of them behind the continent. In the blink of an eye, the spear shadows attacked. Boom, boom, boom. The continent condensed by the primitive style was instantly pierced through. It was the same for those defensive ancient secret techniques. They could only block for a few breaths of time before they were penetrated. After all, the Lord of Heaven was the Lord of Heaven. The universe bridge had already connected the cosmic sea and condensed the origin seed. Moreover, the amount of origin energy he had far surpassed Lu Ming's. His opponent had used origin energy in that move just now. Its power was astonishing, far exceeding that of a 9th-level Divine Lord. It was normal that Lu Ming couldn't block it. Clang, clang, clang. At least 12 spear shadows pierced Lu Ming and the armor that Qiu had transformed into. In the end, they failed to pierce through the armor, but the spear shadows were so powerful that they sent Lu Ming flying tens of thousands of li away. Plush! Within the armor, Lu Ming vomited large mouthfuls of blood, his face pale. Although the spear shadows failed to pierce through the armor, the powerful impact still penetrated the armor and struck Lu Ming's body. Although the armor had blocked a large portion of the impact, the remaining power still injured Lu Ming. It should be known that Lu Ming was powerful, but that was only in terms of his ability to fight head-on. After all, he was only a 5th-level Divine Lord. His body's defensive ability wasn't as strong as his ability to fight head-on. If a 7th-level Divine Lord struck Lu Ming, it would be enough to pose a fatal threat to Lu Ming. However, under normal circumstances, a 7th-level Divine Lord wouldn't be able to hit Lu Ming at all. "Qiu, are you okay?" Lu Ming was somewhat worried about Qiu. Qiu was only a 5th-level Divine Lord. He didn't know if it would have any problems blocking the attack of a Lord of Heaven. "It hurts so much that I'm about to cry. That damned celestial race." Qiu yelled. Lu Ming was relieved. It seemed that Qiu was fine. Lu Ming could not be bothered about his injuries. With the help of this force, he dashed forward quickly. An armor formed from a metallic life form is actually like an source-level divine weapon. What sort of metallic life form is this? The purple-robed Lord of Heaven was also stunned. Then came endless greed.